Now over to the Tsagalakis to share their comments.
Here's the thing I want you to think about. I share this story all the time. It's about a cup of coffee. And I think what we talk about in our group, trust killers, is when we keep secrets and lies, and they come in different forms. And when we keep secrets and lies, what comes out of our mouths and our deception and anger and jealousy. Think about this. If I'm holding a cup of coffee, and my wife bumps into me and I spill coffee, why does the coffee spill? Common response is because my wife bumped into me. Another response is the coffee cup was too full. Another response is because I was stupid and I was standing too close to my wife. There's a lot of responses, but those are not the right answer. You know why I spill coffee? Because I had coffee in the cup. If I had milk in the cup, milk would have spilled. Coke in the cup, Coke would have spilled. So the thing is, pay attention, is whatever's inside our soul when we get bumped. When things are nice, loving, great, sex is good, fun is good, church is good, things are great. When something bumps us, when we have a breach in our honoring one another, or a breach in a trust, and what spills out sometimes is anger, is resentment, is judgment, is complaints. And I'm telling you, that's the beginning of a difficult journey in your marriage. So one thing that would be really helpful, if you pay attention to what's in the cup of your soul, and when you get bumped, when the fruits of the Spirit can come out so you can resolve the bumping, then we're on the right road in our life to honor and love and growing together. And next week, we're going to talk about how to engage in conflict. So when we do get bumped, that we pay attention, what gets spilled out is the grace and love of God, so we can heal things when we get bumped.
And I think we have the opportunity to really think about, how are we cultivating in our marriages? How are we changing our highlight reel to be better cultivators of love, compassion, peace, forgiveness, all those things that cultivate trust and commitment in our marriages? How are we showing up to be cultivators of goodness, kindness, and compassion?
And now I'm going to hand it over to George Papageorge for his closing thoughts.
Very awesome. Well, I tell you, 2 sessions in a row, good stuff going on. And I have to say, I'm landing in some killer groups, or I should say cultivator groups. Really enjoy the small group time. And there are leaders among us in these groups, people, couples that have a lot of wonderful things to say. So thank you for that. When we think about our trust and commitment, I want us just to breathe a second, pause a second, and we're all somewhere with those 2 topics. When I talk to teenagers and I talk about self-esteem, I often say that we're all in a spectrum somewhere from awful, broken, to okay, conditional self-esteem, to a little bit stronger, to pretty vital self-esteem. We're all somewhere on different days. And with trust and commitment, I just want to take a moment just so we take inventory, both in terms of where am I in being trusting, how trusting am I, as well as how trustworthy am I. Those are 2 different sets of reflections. How do I show up with commitment? So wherever we all are, we're somewhere, the Lord knows where we are. And so we just open up to sort of the medicine, whatever he wants to give us to help us where we are with this very foundational topic of trust and commitment. I wanted to share one scripture. It's in Matthew 7. And if anybody is spiritually bored or dry, crack open and read Matthew 5, 6, and 7 over the next couple days, and you'll get reconnected. Beautiful, beautiful portions of scripture. So right in the middle of that Sermon on the Mount and beautiful words from Christ, he says this, and this is how I hear our topic tonight. He says in Matthew 7, starting in verse 24, "Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken them to a wise man who has built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house. And it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But whoever hears these words of mine and does not do them, he will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. I'd love for us to kind of use our imagination a little bit to say this is talking about marriage, the house of marriage. And what we notice about it, wherever we build it, whether we build it on the rock or the sand, pretty much guaranteed the rains will descend, the floods will come, as we had up in here in California. Lord have mercy on my family room, but the rains descended, the floods came, the winds blew, and we will be beat on. That part is not the variable. The variable is where we build it. Father Tom and Pres Pat did a beautiful and creative job in reminding us that this topic of trust and commitment is foundational. Where do we build our marriage? And in what way can we build it on the rock? What I'd like to say, I'm going to say two things. The first thing would be I'd like us to reflect a little bit on what is my relationship between my words and my actions. In what way do my words and actions ever come together? How often do my words and actions come together? How often do my words and actions not come together? How does that work for me, even in my mindfulness, my awareness around what I say and what I do? One of the ways that we could methodically chip away, or the killer we talked about, or building on sand, would be when our words and actions don't match. When our words and actions don't match, we inadvertently build our marriage on sand, so that we miss the opportunity to strengthen what does happen profoundly when words and actions do come together. There's something very weakening over time in our marriages. And then when the words and actions don't come together, we stop trusting the words. We stop planning on something to come through. So that would be just my first reflection, really a self-reflection. It could be something you guys share with one another, but certainly a personal reflection. What's my awareness of how often my words and actions come together? And I would say, here's Jesus talking about it, saying, okay, here's the wise man, here's the foolish man. What's characteristic about what is the difference? The difference between the foolish and the wise is when words and actions come together. So for some of us, it might mean we better turn the dial down on our words until we're ready to let it convert and connect to actions. Some of us need to turn the dial up and crank up the actions and sort of get off the couch, if you will, and really get inspired on the power of doing those actions. So that was my first thought. My second thought is this idea of building our marriage on the rock. And we know from scripture that upon this rock, I'll build my church. He said to Simon, your name is Peter, because you just identified who I really am. And upon this rock, I'll build my church. So Jesus is the rock of our marriage. And so as we think about trust and commitment, if it's just a human effort, we're going to try, but think about when the rock of our marriage is our personal commitment. And this sounds a little cheesy, but to our first love. Our first love being the Lord. If the first love is not the Lord, then what's going to happen is somewhere between these two people, someone's going to have to play God and keep the strength going and keep everything going. Very often, human nature is if we literally don't have the Lord as the rock, the source of life, then the controlling person becomes kind of the God, and the dependent person becomes kind of the worshiper. And my self-esteem is based on how you are toward me. And then my self-esteem is based on how much you listen to me. And it's a big, distorted mess. When the Lord is the first love, he becomes the foundation of who we are as a person, on how we enter this, building this house of marriage on the rock. And in closing, in this relationship with the Lord, that he's the one who could make us more trusting if we have a trusting problem. In that connection with the Lord, he's the one who can make us more trustworthy if we have a trustworthy problem. We have the Lord as our first love. He's the one who can show us what commitment is with total unconditional love, so that we learn how to be committed with that kind of love. So as we think about building our marriage on a healthy, strong trust and commitment, let's build it on the rock of Christ.